Welcome back to our show. My name is Todd Ewing. The name of our show is See the Heaven in Every Black Face. See the Heaven in Every Black Face. Transform ourselves, transform our communities, claim our nobility. Now, I always remind our guests that I see the heaven in every face, and nowadays, particularly after what happened in Orlando, we do want to see the heaven in every face. But this show is about seeing the heaven in every black face. It's about what we're doing in our communities to transform ourselves and transform our communities. Thus the title taken after my book, Seeing Heaven in Every, oh man, I'm forgetting the name of my book, Seeing Heaven in the Face of Black Men. I haven't said that enough times. So this show is about rewriting the negative narrative that exists in society about black folks, and that is subconsciously part of the narrative in our own heads about ourselves all too often. So the idea is we rewrite that from a position seeing the nobility, the power, and the beauty in ourselves, and translating that into how we relate, communicate, interact, and respond to each other. That's what transformation is about, choosing to be actors and not reactors. So the guests I interview are engaged in transforming themselves on some level and transforming their communities. So you can see from my t-shirt, we have a tribute today to the greatest, and we all know who the greatest is on June 3rd. One of our most honored and transformative figures of at least my lifetime transitioned to the next world, the people's champion, the greatest, Muhammad Ali. One who rewrote the negative narrative as profoundly as anyone has done, and so many around the world are recalling the heaven they saw in his face, and most recently at his funeral on Friday. Dignitaries and common people from all over the world came to pay tribute to the greatest Muhammad Ali. Now, I spoke about rewriting our story, which basically means choosing your response based on your highest self versus your ego or your fearful or your fight or flight self. Now, Muhammad Ali, when he got diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, there could have been a natural and even an ego response. It could have said, why me? Or is this some sort of punishment? Or did I deserve this? He could have felt sorry for himself. But what did Muhammad Ali do? He chose humility. He chose humility. And here's what he said. He said, God gave me this condition to show me I'm only human and that he is the greatest. Let me say that again. When Muhammad Ali got Parkinson's, instead of feeling sorry for himself, instead of being upset, he said, God gave me this condition to show me I am only human and he is the greatest. And from there, he used it to propel his humanitarian and spiritual nobility forward. And he said his daily desire was to make sure at the end of the day, he did more to please God than not. What could have been a lifelong trauma became a legacy of courage, conviction, and compassion. That was rewriting your story. That's what rewriting your story can do. Now, one of his legacies, and this is important again on this day after the tragedies in Orlando, one of his legacies is that of a legacy of a peace ambassador for the world. We cannot forget that he used his Muslim faith to promote peace. So it's fitting that we remember him and his faith on the day after such tragic events in Orlando. Ali certainly was a greater representative of Islam than someone who could in any way align themselves with that faith and commit such atrocious crimes. Ali chose to go out of his way to promote peace across social lines in our society, so let us, particularly now, choose peace and go the extra mile. Transform ourselves, transform our communities, claim our nobility. Again, no one characterized that better than the people's champion, Muhammad Ali. So I have a special guest today, and we introduced him last week. He gave us a taste, and that's my brother, Jeffrey Ewing. And I'm not having him on the show just because he's my brother. The t-shirt I have on, a tribute to the greatest, is after a play that he wrote, a one-man show on the life of Muhammad Ali. It became an award-winning play. He won the prestigious Obie Award for this play, recognizing excellence in off-Broadway theater, the Delco Award, recognizing excellence in black theater. He performed it at the 1996 Olympics, I think the same Olympics that Muhammad Ali lit the torch. And he also performed it in London, England, accompanied by Muhammad Ali. So this play had tremendous impact on Muhammad Ali, but also on my brother and also on the many people that saw it. So he will be calling in shortly to talk about his experiences with Muhammad Ali, his recollections of Muhammad Ali. And of course, when he did the play, He researched it extensively, so he has some information and some thoughts probably that maybe that haven't even come out yet in the news. That'd be hard to believe because they've covered Ali from every which way but loose. So we're hoping he'll call in just a few minutes. But while we're waiting for him to call in, I'm going to share just a couple things about Muhammad Ali. And there's so many things we could talk about his life, so many things that we've seen. I always say about Muhammad Ali, we can learn as much from his greatness, from his imperfections as we can from his greatness. And we're not going to just talk about the things he did well, but we're going to talk about some of the challenges he had and how he faced those challenges, some of the things he maybe did that he regretted, because we're all human and we all do those things, but he did it publicly. Most of the things that he did were public knowledge, public news, and we all knew about it, and he handled his apologies publicly as well. A lot of things that I've heard about Muhammad Ali in the over the last several days, in one sense, it's been very interesting because his humanitarian life was so profound and the things he did for so many people. He fought Parkinson's for 32 years. We know that. We know how humble he became, particularly after having Parkinson's. We know the courage that he faced Parkinson's with, and I think that's what touched so many people. And in an effort to talk about that part of his life, oftentimes we've skimmed over just a little bit actually what an amazing athlete that Muhammad Ali was. And I know that people know that, but I think I wanted to share just a little bit about his athletic prowess. And we know the story of how he first became a boxer. We know about his bike getting stolen and a policeman who ran a gym, Joe Martin, came to him and said, well, he went to Joe Martin. He said he wanted to beat this guy up. And Joe Martin invited him to come to his boxing studio, his boxing gym, and train. And what's interesting about that, Lonnie Ali, his wife, during the funeral made some poignant comments about that, and she made some connections that I don't think everybody would have made, and particularly important given what's going on with the police in the black community. And she said, it's amazing what can happen when a policeman in the black community can get together with one of the young urban brothers in the black community and simply just communicate. It's amazing what can happen. And she was talking about the communication of Joe Martin with Muhammad Ali. I thought that was a very profound connection and clearly has powerful implications for today. So there's some descriptions of Muhammad Ali's his physical prowess, and I'll just share a little bit about that. I hope Jeff's listening so he doesn't feel like he has to go over this. But they said Ali possessed a snake-like jab, a physique of a Greek god, and the improvisational skills of a jazz musician. Because of his unusual stance and constant movement, Mr. Ali's punches arrived from unexpected angles, carrying devastating power. As other fighters hunkered down in the center of the ring with their fists doubled in front of their faces, Mr. Ali danced around them, seemingly at play. So let's think about Muhammad Ali's boxing career. He won his first fight just 6 weeks after starting boxing. He won his first fight 6 weeks after starting boxing. He weighed 89 pounds at the time, 89 pounds when he won his first fight. And Muhammad Ali fought more rounds than any heavyweight boxer in history, 255 rounds. And he won the gold medal. Now, this is interesting. I knew he won the gold medal when he was 18, but he defeated three-time lightweight, heavyweight gold medalist from Poland. So the person he defeated for the gold medal was no slouch. Three-time light heavyweight champion from Poland. As a young man, we talk about discipline. We talk about the difficulties of being disciplined, our young people being disciplined. As a young man, he was so dedicated to training when he first started going to the gym that the other kids thought he was crazy. He was running up and down the streets in heavy boots. He would actually run alongside the school bus. Instead of riding the school bus to school, he would run alongside the school bus. His neighbor said he was really dedicated, but his neighbor said, I just thought he was out of his mind. So that is the dedication of his training. Now we look at his amateur career. Again, this is just about his boxing. He won 100 out of 108 amateur fights. So this is all before he became professional. He won 100 out of 108 professional bouts. His heavyweight record was 56-5. He had 37 knockouts. His last fight happened when he was 39 years old, and he lost, as we know, several of those last fights because he was well past his prime, and everybody knew he should have quit. But he lost to Trevor Berbick when he was 39 years old. So that was really the end of his career. And every time I hear the number 39 years old, it always resonates with me because, you know, it's symbolic for him because that ended one part of his life and began another. But two of our greatest heroes we lost at age 39. Both Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were both assassinated when they were 39 years old. And when I heard 39 years old was his last fight, I couldn't help but make that connection to two other great heroes. Now, when he fought Sonny Liston, as we know, everybody thought Sonny Liston was unbeatable. Nobody thought he could beat Sonny Liston. He was actually a 7-1 underdog. But he beat Sonny Liston. We know he beat Sonny Liston. We know he beat him badly. There's an interesting story about that. And again, I hope Jeff's listening because oftentimes life can change on a dime. And during that Sonny Liston fight, for those who were around back in 1964, most of us who were around gathered around our radio. We didn't really have it on TV at the time. I don't think it was on closed circuit TV. We gathered around our radio and we listened, and it was clear that Muhammad Ali was giving Sonny Liston more than he could handle. So in the middle of that fight, in the fifth round, I think it was the fifth round or it was the sixth round. It was the fifth round. Sonny Liston had something on his glove, some kind of liniment oil, some kind of oil that burned Muhammad Ali's eyes, and he couldn't see. And when Muhammad Ali went back to the corner, he asked Angelo Dundee actually to stop the fight. He begged him to stop the fight. He said, cut off these gloves, stop the fight. He said he wanted to show the world what, because everybody at the time thought Sonny Liston was connected to the mafia. So this was his opportunity, he thought, to show the world that Sonny Liston was actually a thug. Angelo Dundee would have no part of it. He said, look, get out there. He said, get out there and run. And Ali refused. So Angelo Dundee actually had to push him out into the ring so he would stay in that fight. He said, this is for the heavyweight championship of the world. Get out there and run. So we and Ali owe a debt of gratitude to Angelo Dundee for not letting him quit. And I'll tell you why that's so important. Because as we know, right after that fight, he became a black Muslim. And he would not have had another chance at that heavyweight championship had he not gone back out there and won it in the seventh round. I think my brother's here. I think he's calling in. So, hey, Jeff, are you there? Can you hear me, Jeff?
I can't hear you, no. There's a lot of music in my ear. I don't know what it is.
How about now?
Yeah, I got you. You hear me?
You can hear you perfectly.
Okay, I hear you perfectly, too.
All right, so, Jeff, welcome to the show. We talked a little bit about Muhammad Ali, and let me just tell you where we are.
All right.
I talked about your show. I talked about the awards you won for your show, the fact that you performed at the Olympics, you went to London, all that sort of thing, and I shared that with the audience. And as I was waiting for you, I just shared a little bit about Muhammad Ali's physical prowess, because sometimes I said, you know, in all of our efforts to share about his humanitarian work, his love for humankind, his religious faith, sometimes what an amazing boxer he was got lost. So I talked about the fact that he won 100 out of 108 amateur fights. He was 56-5 overall. He won his first fight when he was 6 weeks after he started training at 89 pounds. He was 89 pounds when he won his first fight. So I went into a little bit of the history of his fight, and then I just got done talking about the Sonny Liston fight, when he got something in his eyes because of what Sonny had on his gloves, and how Angelo Dundee had to push him back out into the ring to make him continue. So that's it. That's all we've done. So I want to welcome you, Jeff. The audience knows, they know a little bit about what you've done. I've got your T-shirt on. You can't see it, but I've got the T-shirt on that says Tribute to the Greatest.
Yep.
So as we start, I just want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. You spent many years as an actor, so just talk a little bit about that, and just let's get warmed up, and we'll get into some of the questions about Ali in just a few minutes.
Well, I'll just tell you, I began my acting career accidentally. I was at the University of Minnesota. I played baseball there, and a friend of mine was an actor there, and he was going to an audition, so I went with him to this audition. The director assumed I came to audition, which I didn't. But he taught me into auditioning, and so I ended up getting a part in this play. And so that's how my acting career started, just sort of accidentally. And then my baseball, dreams of my baseball career kind of ended. So one thing led to another, and I started acting professionally. And so that's kind of how I got started. And then, the rest is kind of history. I worked at a professional company in Minneapolis called the Mixed Blood Theater Company. And at that point, that's where the Ali idea came in to me early on when because he was a hero of mine from when he first came on the scene. I was 13 when he won the championship. He talked about his physical prowess. I mean, that was what attracted me in the first place. His physical prowess. He was a specimen of a human being that he was like a god.
Right.
And then he had, and then of course you saw what he did. He predicted the rounds, won the fights. He was just a guy that, as an athlete myself, you couldn't help but just be in awe of just the physical specimen that he was, and being that I was a fan of his, I used to sort of imitate him around the place where I worked, and it just came up at one point that somebody wanted to write a play about him, and it wasn't me; it was somebody else. And they said, "Did I want to play Muhammad Ali?" I said, "No, I don't want to do it. I don't think anybody can play Muhammad Ali. I think it's impossible. It can't be done." And they said, "No, you can do it, man, because you imitate him all the time. You do stuff just like him. You can." I said, "No, man, he's still alive, man. He's walking around. He hasn't even stopped fighting yet. I mean, I just thought the comparison would be too close. That it couldn't be done." I said, I'd always say, man, there's a lot of one-man shows that are done, but they're usually about people that have passed away already. They're not going to show up at the play and see it. You're not going to have that close of a comparison because no one's going to have that clear of an idea who that person was.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how the idea came into other people's head, my head, but I was just, I just don't think it can be done.
How many years ago was that when you said Mixed Blood Theater? That's back in Minneapolis. How many years ago was that you first? Because this gives an idea how long you worked on this thing.
Well, when I first started acting, or when the Ali idea came up.
The Ali idea.
I'd say it was probably in the late '70s, or maybe early '80s, something like that, when the idea came up, and to finish that story off, they actually a local playwright did write a play about Ali. He was in the play. My son at the time was like 10 years old. His name was Anu, and he played the young Ali. I played the old Ali, and another friend of mine played the mid-aged Ali. And essentially they talked me into doing it, and I did it, and it was very well received. And so then it was at that point where I got the bug was kind of in me about I want to do a one-man show about this guy. I want to do a one-man. I could do this. People said they liked it. They bought me as him. Now I want to do my own project. But one of those kind of ideas that sticks in your mind. But I wasn't really a playwright, so I didn't really know how it was going to happen. But in my mind, I said it's got to happen. Maybe when someone else writes it, I'll play it. But then fast forward, I moved from Minneapolis to New York City. I was doing real well there. At first, I was got a Broadway show. I was doing plays. I had a lot of stuff going on that was going well. But then all of a sudden, things dried up. Then I'm sitting there, and then just like 3-4 years later. So no one's ever written this play on Muhammad Ali. I said, I guess I'm going to have to write it myself. So, so I sort of stepped out on faith because I really didn't have any idea how I was going to do it. But the only thing I knew for sure was that I needed to take the first step because I knew the first step was research. Right. So I spent I'd say the next 6 months literally in the library getting everything that I could find about him because I don't know if your listeners know, but at that time, Ali was the most written about, the most photographed person in the entire world. So there was so much material on him that you could spend 6 months in the library just trying to get it all.
Yeah.
And so in the process of that, I called the Mixed Blood Theater back home, said, I'm going to write this play. Will you guys produce it? And they said, well, if you write it, we'll produce it. Then another guy showed up, said he wanted to help me write it, and then one thing led to another. And there's a whole spiritual journey of the idea of this play, and then the way it sort of blossomed into what it turned out to be. It's like a path of trials and tribulations that turned out to be just a wonderful journey that I look back on now and go, man, if I would have seen all the trials and tribulations I would have to go through to get this play finally off Broadway, I don't know if I would have done it.
Well,
but I'm just glad I did because it just shows that when you step out on faith, if you just step out on faith and take the first step, if it's a project that is, that's got some goodness behind it, or spirituality, or it's a positive project. I believe that God will step in and help you out the rest of the way, and that's really what happened to me. But the trail was fraught with trials and tribulations that I just kept on going until it was done.
Well, talk about how it got to Off Broadway, because isn't that where Ali came to see it?
Yeah, that's where he came to see it. It got off right. I try to keep this short because we could talk forever about it. But I did the show in Minneapolis. I sent the script out to New York because my goal in the beginning was to write the play and get it to New York. So I sent the script ahead to a lot of different theaters. One theater said they wanted me to come out and do a reading of it. So I came out and did a reading of it. They said they wanted me to do it. So I packed up, went home, packed up. I was getting ready to get on a plane. I got a phone call from the theater that they were bankrupt. The theater was closing down. They couldn't do the play.
Right.
So of course I was pretty heartbroken then. But I felt to myself, well, I still got to go out to New York because I've already done it in Minneapolis. I got to go to New York. So I came out to New York, and that's when I hooked up with Ali for the first time. There was an organization. There was an organization that was part Japanese, part American. They had gotten together and decided they were going to do this whole project, a 10-part documentary on Muhammad Ali's life. It was called The Rest of the Story. And they were trying to get everything in the world that was done about Ali. So they'd already contacted me because they knew I had this play.
Right.
I didn't want to send it to them because I didn't really know who they were, but I told them I was coming out to New York, and then when I came out to New York, maybe I could meet with them and we could talk about it. Well, of course, like I say, the theater closed up, but I came out here anyway, and I had the contact. So when I hooked up with them, then they said, one that I want to meet Ali because they say he comes in to discuss this whole project with us once in a while, and so he'll be here probably soon. So if you want to meet him, we can hook it up that way. So I said, well, definitely I want to meet him. I mean, he's my hero. Of course I want to meet him. And so that was the first meeting. They called me up one day and said he's down here. He's just talking with us. He'll be here for a couple hours. If you want to come in, you can meet him. So of course I was really nervous because, like I say, I don't know if any of the listeners have people that they look up to and they just think is the greatest person in the world. And if you ever met the person, you're disappointed because he wasn't such a great guy. I was just hoping that Muhammad Ali would be the kind of a person that I thought he was, which was generous, kind, just really a nice guy. That's what he seemed like to me. With all the talent, with all the fame, he always seemed like a guy who was just down to earth, and he would be a nice guy to meet. And just to say he was just a sweet man. He already had the Parkinson's syndrome, so he was shaking a little bit, wasn't talking real loud, but he as far as the way he was with me, was like he just known me forever. He just sat down, we started talking. I had a scrapbook. I showed him, the scrapbook about the play, and we talked about, a lot of different things. And he showed me a couple magic tricks, and just really got a kick out of the fact that I was doing this play about him. And that was, and they said, well, he's got to go out to the airport. You want to ride out to the airport with him in the back of the limousine. So,
wow.
So I'm like in this surreal kind of a day, right? I mean, I meet him. He's great. They asked me to want to ride at the airport with him. And now, so I'm sitting in the back of this limousine with him. I'm just like pinching myself. I can't believe that this is really happening, right?
Right.
And then we're just talking. We talked about religion, and he's a very devout Muslim. I'm a very devout member of the Baha'i faith, and he knew about the Baha'i faith, so he asked me about it. He said he didn't even know a lot about it, but he wanted to know some more about it, so we discussed that, and so that was a great conversation. And then just about the fights and different, and he always kept saying to me, there's so many Muslims, there's 100 million Muslims, how many Baha'is are there? I said, well, there's about 7 million. He said, he kept saying there's 100 million Muslims. I said, well, you guys have been around 1,000 years, man. You got to give us a little time. We've been about 150 years. We'll catch up to you. And he goes, there's 100 million Muslims.
He wouldn't stop saying it, right?
Yeah, wouldn't stop saying it. So I said to him, all right, man, you keep saying that like it means something. I said, all right, listen to me. I said, back in the 60s, I said, the Vietnam War. I said, you got people who got black people going to Vietnam, you got white people. Everybody's going to Vietnam to fight that war. One guy stands up and says he ain't going. Who turned out to be right? And then, of course, that was him. And he looks at me, he gives me that, the fist and the wide eyes, like he's going to punch me out.
Right.
I said, yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. So numbers don't mean anything, man. So he kind of backed off on that one a little bit. So we had a really nice time going out to the airport. And then I didn't see him again until he actually came to see my play off Broadway.
Yeah, talk about that. So this is years down the road now, and now again, you said, and I want to get into his life just a little bit, but you said that, of course, playing a living legend. I mean, that takes a lot of courage. And at first you said you didn't want to do it. So, What was it like asking Muhammad Ali, or getting him to come to the play, one, and then just thinking about him being in the audience, seeing the play about his life. So just tell me how you got him there, what it felt like when you saw him in the audience as you're up there on stage doing the play.
My choreographer for the play was a former sparring partner of his named Ron Lipton. Ron was the guy who still had a connection with Ali, and we found out that he was in town doing some promotion for a clothing line he had at Macy's. So Ron calls Lipton, he said, Ali's in town, we got to get to him, we got to get to him, we got to see the play. It's only 2 weeks left of it, you got to get him there. And I said, you think we can get to him? He goes, if he sees me, I think he'll call me up. So me and him went down to Macy's, we bogarted through the crowd, and got Ali's attention. He saw Ron, he just beckoned for him to come up on the stage. He was up on this kind of Diaz kind of a thing.
Right.
And we got through, and Ron's telling me, and then I'd met him, like, I think this is probably 92, so it's only been about a year or so since I'd seen him, right? So it wasn't a long time after the first time I saw him. But he definitely knew who Ron was. And he seemed like he recognized me, but I wasn't sure. But Ron said, so Ali says, well, when is the play? He kind of whispered. They kind of talked like, well, when's the play? And Ron says, got 2 weeks left. It's going, so it's tonight, it's tomorrow night, whatever. He said, I'll be there tonight. I asked Ron, I said, you think he's really going to come? He said, well, I've known him for a lot of years. He's never broken his word that I've known of, so I think he'll be there. So I went down to the theater, getting ready to do the play. My stage manager comes up and tells me he's here. He's got 2 limousines full of people. He just walked in. He was sitting on, my set was a three-sided ring with the front open to the audience. And I had a stool in the corner, and he told me, Ali's up on your stage, sitting on the stool. And I said, oh, man, so he was there. He's here. They said, yeah. And I mean, right away, I don't know if you've been, so, like, nervous that you get cotton mouth. You know what cotton mouth is? When you got no saliva. I just got so nervous that I said, oh, my God, this is like a dream come true, but I'm scared to death, right?
Amen.
What if he doesn't like it? Right. I mean, it's not like I'm just playing the guy. I wrote the play. I took a lot of liberties with it because I did a lot of research, but there was a few things that weren't written on that I had to take, poetic license with and just decide what I thought he would say about certain things, and they were sensitive issues. Right. I said, the only thing I could do was hope that he liked it, hope that I could get through it without being nervous, and just be able to say the words, right? Because he was sitting right in the front.
Right.
And
we've got the clip of that. We've got the clip of that.
Who's got the clip of it?
We don't have it here, but I've got the clip.
Okay.
With him in the audience.
Yeah, and so just to make a long story short on that one, I always start the show as I'm shaking hands with members of the audience. I got ready to shake his hand, and he just put his overcoat over his head and leaned back like he was ignoring me, right? So essentially he was messing with me, so he just brought the house down right away, right? But everybody else is laughing. I still had the cotton mouth. I was having trouble just talking, right? But finally when I got into the show and really started doing the show, I could see that, he was liking it. And it was the interesting thing about that night was that the audience was totally connected with him. As much as they were connected with me.
Of course.
Because every time I would say something that was a little bit controversial,
they look at him.
They look. It was just beauty. You could see everybody look at him to see how he was taking it. Right. If he took it all right, they were good with it, right?
Right.
But that's how the night was. Every time something happened, I looked at him too. I didn't know how he was going to take it. And but he always had this whole time, the whole show, he had this sort of like a half kind of smile on his face, like he was just enjoying this person standing up in front of him. Doing him, right?
Yeah.
And then when the show was over, I just came down, and I'll leave the stage and go backstage. This time I stayed on stage. I came down to the audience. Usually I've got a standing ovation. I put my arm around his shoulder, and I was presenting him with this little plaque that we had for him, and put my arm around his shoulder, and he says, he whispers in my ear, he says, you could, it's just like me. He said, and then I said, well, great, man, thanks. He said, but you ain't as pretty as me. and I said, and then people couldn't hear him, so they said, what do you say? What do you say? I said, he said I'm good, just like him, but I'm not as pretty as him. But I said, and I'm not as pretty as him, but I'm pretty enough to play him. And then that was my answer, and that brought the house down too. And then it was just was a great night. It was one of those kind of nights where It couldn't have ended up any better. He loved it, and that's why. When they called him, when we decided to go over to London with the play, the people who were booking the play over there, they called him up and asked him to come over and do some promotion for it, and he did. And if he didn't like the play, he wouldn't have done it. He wouldn't have come over, right? He would just said, "No, I'm busy" or whatever. But I think you called that to my attention. I had never really thought about it like that. That the fact that he came means he must have loved the play, or he wouldn't have come. Because he wasn't the guy that did things just for money,
Right.
And so, I'm just totally flattered that I got to spend a lot of time with him. Some other times too, if you want to talk about that. But those were big times when he came to London. Henry Cooper was there. Henry Cooper was the guy that he beat just the fight before he beat Sonny Liston. He beat Henry Cooper. He said Cooper in 5, no jive. That's what he said. Henry Cooper knocked him out in the 5th round, and. So London I had more fun in London because I knew he liked it. Now I could have fun with him, right?
Right.
And then my family came over, my wife, my 2 kids, and and they have memories. They got nice pictures with him and Ali when Jordan, he was 3, Aubrey, she was 10 then.
Jordan and Aubrey are his son and daughter.
Yeah, and George is 26 now. Aubrey's 33, I believe. She has her own kids now, and it's just like they have some really nice pictures that they'll really cherish as they grow older. Just realizing that they were actually there, and they actually Jordan sat on his lap, and he was just so sweet, and he was so sweet to everybody over there just as well. That I don't know if you saw the memorial, which I know you did. I mean, everybody that had anything to say about him, they talked about the sweetness of his spirit, the kindness, the gentleness, being there for whoever was there. He was like, they felt like everybody felt the connection. Like they'd known him forever, right?
Yeah.
It was just an amazing thing, but that's kind of how that went, those 2 shows.
Well, I want to ask you now, because you did a lot of research on his life. You followed his life. We followed him. I was 11. You were 13 when the first Sonny Liston fight came on. And we know we were glued to that radio, right? And we know everything that led up to that fight. It was, Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay then, right? I mean, he was not the first in line to fight Sonny Liston. He said he talked himself in. His mouth got him there because he basically sweetened the gate, right? So people wanted him to fight, so he moved up the ladder. So I mean that kind of is the first evidence of his promotional ability and his conviction about who he was. And we know the story of him going, at the weigh-in. Well, let me say something a little bit about that. That whole braggadocio that he did at the predictions and all that kind of stuff. Right.
He discovered that. Now, you're right about the fact that he talked himself into that fight, but he talked himself into that fight not because people loved it, but because people couldn't stand it. They wanted Sonny Liston to shut him up.
Right.
And he got all that from this. I don't know if people know, back in history in the 50s, there's a famous wrestler named Gorgeous George, and Gorgeous George was this wrestler who was just bragged all the time about how great he was, how he's going to kill this person, kill that person. And Muhammad Ali met him at one point on a radio show, and he was bragging about he had he was just had the blonde hair, he had the cape, he had 2 midgets that walked in the ring with him carrying the ends of his cape. He sprayed the air to make sure the air was clean enough for him to wrestle in. I mean, it was just crazy. That was his show,
right.
And people just wanted to see him get beat. So Ali said after he met him, he went to his next wrestling match, and he said the place was packed with people. He said everybody screaming their heads off, but they weren't screaming for him. They were screaming that somebody would beat this guy, right?
Right.
So that's when he got the idea to sweeten the gate. You got to sour the people, right?
That's the theme.
And so that's all that braggadocio was just a show. And he even said one time, he said, it's not like he really knew he could do that, but he knew he had to because he backed himself into a corner, and he said he knew he had to come through. So so his willpower, really his will was so strong that he knew this was the way he was going to get that fight and get his name in the paper and get what he needed to get those people looking at him. And of course, it worked. It was genius, right?
It was genius.
Yeah.
It was. It's what's amazing. And I think anything you want to say about his courage, but I think people need to think back, and this has been recounted on the news and in the everybody refers to it. But you almost have to pause for a minute to just think about the guy. Not long after he won the Olympic gold medal, which he won at 18, right? We talked about that. And he won it only 6 years after he started boxing, which is pretty amazing too. But then he's this young man, I think 22, when he fought Sonny Liston, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And so he's 22 years old. He's fighting Sonny Liston for the heavyweight championship of the world. Meanwhile, he had been sneaking into these meetings with Malcolm X. I read somewhere he said that you know, he knew he had to sneak in because he knew he wouldn't get a shot at the title if anybody knew he was investigating, you know, the black Muslims, right?
Yeah, right.
So he's sneaking in. He's doing that. So finally goes in. He wins this fight. You know, with all the controversy with the liniment or whatever on the gloves. You know, the whole thing with Sonny Liston being part of the mafia. So and so the next day, he announced that he was a member of the Nation of Islam.
Yeah.
Which, you know, is pretty profound. Then just a couple of years later, he says he's not going to Vietnam. You know, anything you want to say about his courage? I mean, I think this is I think one of the things we're all moved by. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add about that, but that struck me as I was again going back and looking at his life.
Well, in fact, I was just telling this to some friends of mine yesterday about just when you think, like you said, 22 years old, right? At 22 years old, he had achieved his dream. His dream was to be heavyweight champion of the world. He'd done everything he could to get there. He had achieved it. But he had this spiritual belief that he had to follow Allah. He had to do what Allah wanted him to do, which put his dream on the line, right? Now, when you think about that, you know, a lot of people said, well, he had a choice. You know, the idea was they told him, they said, you got to go to Vietnam. We all got to save face here. If you don't have to go in there. You go to Vietnam. You don't have to fight. Just got to do exhibition matches for the soldiers. So he says, well, if I go do the exhibition matches, will I be supporting the war? They said, yes. He goes, well, then I can't do it. And then they said, well, then if you don't do it, you're going to jail. We're going to take your title away, and you're never going to fight again. Now, okay, so we all know what he did. He made the choice to not go, and they took his title, and they threatened that they gave him a 5-year sentence to go to jail, but he never went to jail because he had the money to stay out and fight it. But I want to just say, I think about this. At 22 years old, these things are coming at him, right? And you know he doesn't want to give up that title.
Right.
But and I'm thinking he's probably sitting at home wherever he is with all this stuff on his plate. Is there any way that I can do this and still be true to Allah and true to myself, right? And I believe that he couldn't find a way where he could be true to Allah and true to himself and still go to Vietnam. So it boiled down to the fact that he didn't have a choice, right?
So a lot of people say a lot of mind he didn't.
Yeah, a lot of people say, you know, everybody has a choice. And my point is this: if you have a devout belief in anything that's a spiritual belief, like he had, it was tunnel vision, right? Allah is all that matters.
Right.
If Allah says no, that means I don't have a choice, and people don't understand that. Right. There are people who have a strong enough belief in things that you can say 99 out of 100 people have a choice, but that one guy doesn't. Right. And he was that one guy who didn't have a choice. And I talk a lot about, you know, commitment, right? I mean, you talk about the power of commitment, right? He had a commitment to Allah. He had a commitment to his people. And what did he always feel like did he always feel like doing the right thing? Did he always feel like, you know, how he felt didn't really matter to him? And I say that not only about that commitment, but in his life. With the Parkinson's, he kept getting worse and worse and worse. But his commitment to the world, to life, to humanity, to what he felt that his job was on this planet, was to be an example. And no matter how he felt, we know that with the Parkinson's, as he was, you know, as it got worse and worse, he had to be having some bad days in there somewhere, right?
He did.
But the question in this seminar I went to one time, they say, okay, I understand how you feel. Now, what are you going to do?
Right.
All right? And that was the thing I think he had to deal with on a daily basis, not only with the Vietnam thing, but with the sickness. Because I'm sure a lot of times he didn't even feel like doing things that he was asked to do. But his commitment to the people, his commitment to be the people's champion, that was such a big thing to him that no matter how he felt, he overcame it because his commitment was so much bigger than how he felt.
You know,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and I want to read you this. Because I did some research on some of these quotes of what people talked about him.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Ali was eventually revered around the world, not because he got the right answers to the hardest questions, but because when he could have opted for sports, fame, and riches, he chose to tackle such issues. He insisted on facing those questions with soul-deep sincerity, then following where his decisions led. Ali is proof, and I think this is powerful, that deep conviction explained eloquently under duress resonates around the world, even among those who do not entirely agree. In fact, even among many who strongly disagree. And finally, this one struck me too. It said it may be noted less often that he did what he did then in 1967 was equivalent to a current athlete who combined the accomplishments and fame of Peyton Manning, LeBron James, and Derek Jeter, denouncing the country's entire military policy, performing an act of civil disobedience to protest it, and basing his stand on a set of beliefs that few Americans grasp. So he's kind of comparing what it would take today to do the same thing that he did back then.
He said he was saying that those athletes. I didn't quite get that comparison.
Well, it's a three. They have to put all three of those together, and then have them denounce the entire military establishment to kind of compare with what Ali did back then. But I want to mention a couple things, about so many things I wanted to ask you about. But one is, of course, we know about the George Foreman fight. I was going to ask you, what his most impressive fight was to you. Then I wanted to ask you about Howard Cosell, because that's a unique relationship. But I think that, quickly, just his most impressive fight, in your view.
Well, that's a good question. Sonny Liston obviously was huge because, he was a I forgot what the underdog, what 10-1 underdog or something like that. It was a huge underdog. There's no way he could beat Sonny Liston. And I have to say that I didn't know if he could either. I just wanted him to.
Right.
But
you're 13 years old. You had that drive to want him to, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so you have to know that was just an awesome fight because he shocked. That's like you said, he shocked the world, right?
Right.
A lot of people lost a lot of money on that fight. So then you got to go fast forward. When he comes back, and I'd say a fight that he lost was awesome. The first fight to Joe Frazier when he lost that first fight, because again you're talking about a guy with courage. And when he lost that first fight, he'd been in exile for 4 years. He hadn't fought for 4 years. He fought two tone-up fights. He fought Jerry Quarry and then Oscar Bonavena. And then before the year was out, he was fighting that title fight with Joe Frazier, and he fought to the 15th round when Joe Frazier knocked him down. And then when the fight was over, he had an interview, and they said, Joe Frazier says, "You don't want any more, you're done." He goes, "Oh, how wrong he is." Yeah. And then again the courage he showed even in losing. That he was a gracious loser. He didn't give up. It just made him gird up his loins to take on Frazier again. Of course, he didn't get to because then Frazier lost the title to George Foreman. So again, you have the same things like bookends almost. You got George Foreman, who was another. This guy was like unbelievable. Another physical specimen that you go. How is Ali at the age he's at now going to take this guy? There's no way. Again, the odds are that he's going to. In fact, George Foreman said he didn't want to fight Ali, and they said, "Why not?" He said, "Because he's so beloved. If I hurt him, it'll end my career. Right. I don't want to fight him, right?" And of course, the rest is history. Ali goes over to Zaire. The African people are behind him the whole way. They call it the miracle at 4 a.m. over there. I think that's what I heard they call it that. But of course, he goes over there and he wins that fight. So you got to say, I guess if I had to pick 3 fights, it'd be that first Liston, that first Frazier, and even though he came back and beat Frazier twice, that loss in the comeback shows again the kind of man he was, right? That he's in defeat. I can be beat, but I'm not done. I'm not down. Right. I'll still come back. And it didn't matter because it didn't change the fact that he was the most beloved athlete in the world, even though he lost. People cried when he lost, man. People. And there was an old saying: when Muhammad Ali fought, the world stopped, right? Yeah. And that was true. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. Said, "Yeah, when Ali would fight, I remember when I was a kid, me and my dad, we would get together. We called neighbors over. We'd have barbecues. we'd have family reunions or whatever. Everything would be around the Ali fight, right? And then everybody would be waiting for the either to come on the radio or back in the day, if you recall, when I saw the George Foreman fight, it was on you had to go to the movie theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to the movie theater and watched it there, and I was so worried about him. And then he just, and George Foreman says, George Foreman says that he felt that he was going to kill him. He felt he was going to hurt him. Right. And then he said when he's in the middle of the fight, he said that Ali just kept talking to him. Is that all you got? Is that all you got? He said they told me you could punch. And then they blocked you punches. He said sometime around the 7th or 8th round, he said to Foreman, he said, come on, man, I thought you could punch. Is that all you got? He said, and when he asked me, he said, I didn't know. He said, the fact of the matter was, that was all I had.
he said that. He said that's all I had. Yeah.
Yeah. And he said, some people say it was a fast count. Some people say, if I could have got up, I could. He said it wouldn't have mattered. He goes, it might have been a fast count, it might not have been a fast count, but it was over. He said, if I'd have got up again, he would have still knocked me out because I was done. There was just nothing left. And he said, right now, he goes, I love Ali. He goes, and I'm just proud to be a part of his legend.
Yeah.
And
George Foreman was when I saw him take off his shirt.
Mm-hmm.
For that fight, I mean, I was scared to death. But he said this is one of the things he said. He said, I went out and hit Muhammad Ali with the hardest shot to the body I ever delivered to any opponent. He said, anybody else in the world would have crumbled. He said, Mr. Ali began to goad him, and he said, show me something, George. Those don't hurt. And then Freddie Pacheco said he came to him Freddie Pacheco was his physician, said he came to him after the first round and said, this guy can't punch. That's what he said about George Foreman. And then, of course, in the 8th round, he told Pacheco before he went out there, he said, I'm going to take him out in this round. And Pacheco said, you better, because he said, make it fast because it's going to rain. He told him. So that's exactly what happened. As soon as he took him out, it started to rain. And
it was torrential.
It was torrential. And what they said, and I didn't know this, maybe you knew this, is all of a sudden they felt this swaying, right? And they thought it was because of the rain. And it wasn't the rain, it was the people that were swaying. And they said that the people lined up for 40 miles to see him go by, shielding their babies in the rain, 40 miles just to get a glimpse of him coming by. I mean, I thought that was pretty profound. I got to move to another subject, though, Jeff. I want to... we know about his prowess. We know about his sacrifices. We know about his humanitarian. But he was kind of a multifaceted guy, and I think a person can be a great guy and still have flaws.
Yeah.
And so his some of his more glaring shortcomings were how he talked about Joe Frazier. He really was cruel, particularly with the Thrilla in Manila. And by the way, speaking of his stamina, they said he got hit 440 times in the Thrilla in Manila. 440 times.
Joe Frazier. Go ahead.
No, this was Ali.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, but but anyway, just he and you know this, but the audience doesn't necessarily know this. How Frazier stood up for him when he lost his title and actually tried to get Nixon to change things. A number of things he did right that stood up for Ali, and still Ali was cruel, and we know his kids got hurt because of the way he was talking about Frazier being dumb and stupid and all that kind of stuff, and
gorilla and all that
stuff. What do you make of that? I mean, I know we all have contradictions, but do you have any thoughts about kind of where that might have come from, why he might have done that? Because he was a good guy.
Well, I know what I've read. I think I read a few things about it, and because Frazier's point was they had a set gate of $5 million apiece, so he didn't have to do that to hype the gate, right?
Right.
And Ali said that he did it. He didn't do it to hype the gate. He was doing it because he wanted to get in Frazier's head.
Right.
I mean, that was his secret weapon was to psychologically beat guys before he got in the ring, right?
Right.
And so he said that was why he said all that stuff about Frazier. But he said at the same time he wasn't thinking of the repercussions with the kids, or it was a mistake. I think he apologized to Joe Frazier later on.
Yeah.
And Joe Frazier, I believe, accepted the apology. And I saw an interview with Joe Frazier late in life where he felt, he called Ali the butterfly. That's what he always called him.
Yeah.
And he said and he had a tear in his eye. I don't know if you saw this interview.
Yeah, I did.
When he said that you know he felt so bad that you know the butterfly. He said he gave so much to the sport and gave so much to the world. He should be able to enjoy it. He just had his tear in his eye because he knew Ali, the condition he was in.
Right.
And I would say that's like you say, everybody has their foibles. Everybody makes their mistakes. And I always say this too. I say, you know, it's about transformation. You know, I make mistakes, you make mistakes, Ali makes mistakes, everybody in this world makes mistakes.
Right.
But I believe if you're on a spiritual path and you're sincerely trying to be the best person that you can be, you always get an opportunity to atone for those mistakes, or you get an opportunity to see the mistake that you made and go back and fix it.
Right.
Because I always say that, you know, the world, for spiritual growth, you have to have trials and tribulations. You have to make mistakes.
Right.
But I believe in the final analysis, I think that outside of disease, every trial and tribulation is connected with another human being.
Right.
And if you can recognize that person as being a gift to you from God, that whatever he said or whatever he did was for your own good, and if you can see, like, for example, Frazier comes into Ali's life. Ali does what he did to Frazier. And then Ali is in his transformation process. He sees that the mistake that he made, and Frazier's still alive, so he has an opportunity to fix it with Frazier.
Right.
And to me, that's what spiritual transformation is, to make a mistake. And in the following out, I'm thinking that God, which I believe is a just God, he sends these trials and tribulations. In the end, I think the question he would ask us would be, God would ask would be, okay, you had a problem with that guy, but did you fix it, or did you leave it alone?
Yeah.
Because if you would have fixed it, you got the point, right?
Did you grow from it? Did you change? Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it takes humility to apologize and say you're wrong, and so I mean, I think that's. And then you said it says a lot for Joe Frazier.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, I saw that thing with a tear in his eyes. You know, he said he deserves better. You know, he said the champ deserves better, right? And he had a tear. It was sincere. But it's very interesting because everything's two-sided, right? I mean, you know, we always know the story of Ali being cruel to Joe Frazier.
Patterson, Terrell.
Well, Terrell, I you know, whether I like it or not, Terrell wouldn't call him his name. Floyd Patterson wouldn't call him his name. But the thing I want to say about Frazier.
Well, Floyd Patterson said he was fighting to get the title back for America. Ali wasn't even American. I'm fighting to get the title back for America.
The whole thing. But let me say this thing about Frazier because I think it's important. You know, I have all the respect in the world for Joe Frazier, but Joe Frazier had absolutely no respect for Ali's religion. I mean, I think one of the things that happened was, I was reading lately, is that he forgave Ali, and actually Frazier's son forgave Ali, right? Mm-hmm. And they said, you know, particularly now that he was down and out, you know, this is, you know, obviously when he was still alive, he was down and out, they had to forgive him. But Frazier alluded to the fact that, you know, maybe he was having his Parkinson's because of the religion he belonged to. So, I mean, he kind of, you know, it's kind of like we all have growing to do, right? And so... And Frazier, you know, has to deal with that. But real quickly, relationship with Malcolm X. You know, Malcolm trained him, Malcolm schooled him, Malcolm supported him, and then when the break with Elijah Muhammad came, when he broke with Elijah Muhammad, then Ali broke with Malcolm. Do you have any thoughts about that? Any perspective on that?
Well, only. The fact that it was sad that happened, but again, it was one of those kind of growing things. I mean, Malcolm X was a little bit ahead of Ali as far as his transformation, right? I mean, he had gone to Mecca. He had seen the fact that, you know, Elijah Muhammad wasn't teaching the true Muslim faith, that he was teaching a kind of a cult, kind of a sect in a way. He wasn't teaching what Muhammad taught, and he saw all these white people over there that were, you know, were Muslims as well. He came back with a different philosophy. And so that's so they starts talking different. So then Elijah Muhammad says, "All right, cut him off. Nobody talks to him." Well, Ali hadn't come to that point yet. He was still with the separatism idea, and so he was devoted to Elijah Muhammad, and where he was spiritually at the time was he had to cut Malcolm X off. Well, I mean, as I was watching the memorial the other day, I saw Malcolm X's daughter talking for a while. Really great speech she had.
Beautiful.
And she talked about that Ali grieved over the fact that they had that breach because he never got a chance to talk to him before he died.
Right, exactly.
And so I would just say that, again, it was part of his spiritual growth, and that he was able to give back because, like she said, he was such a big part of her life. She said,
50 years.
She said he kept breath in her father's life for 50, or in her father for 50 years, and when he died, they both died together. I think she said something like that.
Yeah.
They both left together, as far as she was concerned. So again, he atoned for that. You know, the best he possibly could.
Yeah.
And so I would just say that, like, again, another
Growth.
just step in his growing process, and he recognized it.
Well, I think it's a lesson. It's a lesson for all of us, right? I mean, I think, you know, what spiritual growth really is. You know what I mean? It's not making mistakes. It's not making sometimes huge mistakes, right? And things you regret, but you can transform those mistakes. We're about down to about 5 minutes or less here, so there's just a couple quick things I want to say, and then if you got a few words to say in closing, if you can do any of that Bundini thing, it'll be great. But I think, you know, one of the things I think obviously was his impact on people and his diversity of friends, right? I mean, Orrin Hatch was his friend. That's one of the most conservative senators in Washington, D.C. He spoke at his funeral, right? They were good friends, you know. They said they talked about the discipline of their faith. Hatch a Mormon, Ali a Muslim, and they talked about what a discipline it took to live their faith. And Orrin Hatch said he met some of the most famous people in the world, but he never met anyone more charismatic or more committed to their values. So on one hand, he's got Orrin Hatch as a friend. On the other hand, he's got Don King as a friend who he encouraged to be a promoter. On the other hand, he had Elvis Presley as a friend, right? A lot of people didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
He invited Elvis Presley to his training camp in Deer Park. He said he's one of the sweetest, nicest men he ever met, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I read something very funny about that. Is like when they first met, Ali had his entourage of black Muslims, and Elvis Presley had his redneck people from Memphis. And it's kind of like they didn't know what to do with each other. So they're seeing each other. You know, I don't know where they were, but it's like they didn't. But they were both looking at each other. I don't know who said this, whether it was Freddie Pacheco or another one. He said they looked at each other. Both of them looked at each other like they were gods. Like they just stared at them like little kids. They each stared at each other like little kids.
Yeah, that's a trip.
They didn't know what to do with each other.
That's a lot of power right there.
That's a lot of power right there.
Yeah.
But then you know, just obviously his great quotes. You know, he had so many great quotes. But, you know, fun one is, if you ever dream of beating me, you'd better wake up and apologize. I love that one.
Yeah.
You know,
well, the one that I like a lot. He talks about how a champion is made after and this is a good how his life was too, right? A champion is made after he's tired.
Right.
The one who can dig deeper, go beyond that second win, beyond that third win, to the edge of death. The edge of death. That's where a champion is made.
Right.
And he lived his life right through that. My understanding is the last organ that stopped in his body was his heart.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he fought. He wore himself. He gave everything.
Yeah.
And he was a champion, true champion in every way. Right?
Yeah. Jeff, we're not going to have time to do the Bundini thing because we're out of time.
I got you.
But I appreciate you being on. I appreciate you sharing. I wish we had more time because that Bundini thing is great, right?
Yeah.
We'll have to we'll pull that in another show because I think it's worthy of not just Ali, but I think it has implications for other things and for people in general. So I'll close with this quote about Ali, and you know, everybody's read this one, but he said, "I'd like to be remembered as a man who won the heavyweight championship 3 times, who was humorous, who treated everyone right, as a man who never looked down on those who looked up to him and who helped as many people as he could, as a man who stood up for his beliefs no matter what, as a man who tried to unite all humankind through faith and love. And if that's all too much, then I guess I'd settle for being remembered only as a great boxer who became a leader and a champion for his people. And I wouldn't even mind if folks forgot how pretty I was." So that's how he wanted to be remembered. So, Jeff, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, and I love you. You're my hero, as you know.
Well, you're my hero too, man, and I appreciate you having me on. And you know, we all love Ali, and I'm glad we just got to do this because he deserves even more. Like you said, you can't do enough. You know.
Can't do enough.
Yeah.
But we got to sign off, and between now and next week, remember to see the heaven in every black face. Transform yourself, transform your communities. Thank you all very much.